On September 5th, 1972, at 4:10 a.m., 8 members from a terrorist group called Black September infiltrated the Olympic Village in Munich, Germany. They killed 11 Israeli Olympiads and coaches after a grueling 18-hour hostage situation. This tragedy contributed to the brutal conflict between Palestine and Israel, which can be traced back to the start of Zionism and the compromises of Resolutions 181 and 242 made by the United Nations. But it also led the way to an Israeli assassination squad, which took part in numerous attacks on Palestinian Liberation Organization members, showing Israel's refusal to compromise after such an event. In the 1890s, Theodor Herzl started the Zionist movement in response to the anti-Semitism across Europe in the 20th century. They worked to find a home for Jewish people and to also gain control of very desirable trade routes in the Middle East. According to the Balfour Declaration of 1917, Palestine would be the new state for the Jewish people. Palestinians who were against the declaration attacked many new Jewish immigrants entering the country. After the atrocities of World War II, Britain handed the issue to the United Nations. The United Nations came up with Resolution 181, which was the plan for a shared Jewish and Arab state. Jewish people accepted the plan, while Arabs rejected it. In support of their fellow Arabs, the surrounding countries of Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and Egypt went to war against Israel. War for Israel's independence had begun. After 10 months of fighting, the Zionist movement proved too powerful and Israel gained even more land than the original partition granted. Israel was finally a new country and was recognized immediately by United States President Truman. But during this time period there were mass massacres on both sides, including the massacre of over 100 men and women at Deir Yassin in 1948 by Israeli forces. There was also the Gush Etzion massacre, where around 120 to 150 Israelis were killed by Arab irregulars in 1948. On June 5, 1967, Israel launched a surprise attack on Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip. Egypt's air support was crippled within a few hours. Syria and Jordan were also caught off guard by Israel and were pushed back, allowing Israel to take the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which was the last Palestinian land. The United Nations stepped in quickly with Resolution 242, calling for a ceasefire and peace between the countries in return of Israel giving back the land it had conquered. In the years after the Six-Day War, Israel refused to give back the land they had conquered from the Palestinian refugees. In 1970, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was driven out of Lebanon by a civil war, and it was moved to Jordan, where the attacks against Israeli people were increased dramatically. This led to the Avivim school bus massacre, where Palestinians attacked an Israeli school bus, killing 12 and injuring 19, many of which were children. Following this massacre were many more car bombs and letter explosives, and eventually the attack in Munich, Germany. August 26, 1972, in Munich, Germany, the beginning of the 20th Summer Olympic Games of Peace and Joy began. Germany had only hosted the Olympics once before, in the year 1936, by the Nazi regime in Berlin. These Olympics were famous for American swimmer Mark Spitz winning 7 gold medals, Soviet Union gymnast Olga Korbut redefining gymnastics, and most of all, they are most remembered because of the Munich Massacre. Israel was wary of returning to Germany since many athletes had family members who were killed in the Holocaust or were survivors of various concentration camps. The security of the games was at an all-time low because they wanted the theme of peace to be upheld and to show the world that they had moved on from their militaristic rule. Teams would sneak in and out of the Olympic Village every night over a 6-foot fence. This is where Black September infiltrated the village while climbing the fence, dressed as another team with duffel bags holding their Kalashnikov rifles at 4:10 a.m. Security deemed them as athletes returning back after a late night on the town. After climbing the fence, they walked to building number 31 on Connolly Strasse, where the Israeli team of Olympiads and coaches were staying. In the initial assault, Zeev Friedman, David Berger, Yakov Springer, Eliezer Haufen, Josef Gutfreund, Kiat Shor, Mark Slavin, Andrei Spitzer, and Amit Zur Shapira were taken hostage from apartments 1 and 3. Moshe Weinberg and Yosef Romano were killed while helping fellow teammate Gad Sabari escape. Israeli blood had been shed on German soil once again. Knowing the village was aware of their presence, the group made their list of demands. They wanted the release of 234 Palestinians jailed in Israel, many of which were other terrorists under the Palestinian Liberation Organization, along with 2 leaders from the German Red Army faction. After the Nazi regime fell, Germany was split into West and East Germany. West Germany did not have a national police force or a counterterrorism team. The local police attempted storming the building in hopes of catching the group off guard, but due to the event being broadcast around the world in real time, Black September members were prepared. The group leader, Latif Afif, was watching the news coverage inside the building and rushed out yelling to the police officials he would personally execute 2 hostages if they attempted a siege. The raid was called off immediately. After tense negotiations, they finalized on a plan on transporting everyone to Cairo to continue the negotiation process. 2 helicopters would fly the Israeli hostages and their Palestinian captors to the Fürstenfeldbruck airport, in which they would fly to Cairo to continue negotiations. An ill-prepared German rescue team without walkie-talkies or enough snipers engaged the terrorists at the airport. The Palestinians turned their guns on the hostages, killing all 9 along with 1 German police officer. Germany in return killed 5 of the 8 terrorists.
They have now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
1 month after arresting the remaining 3 gunmen, fellow members from Black September hijacked Lufthansa Flight 615, took 20 hostages, and demanded the gunmen be released. West Germany complied with the demands, letting Jamal al-Gashey, Adnan al-Gashey, and Mohammed Safidi free, where they are granted asylum in Libya. The Israeli government did not take the Munich attack lightly. Only 2 days after the events transpired in Munich, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir called for a meeting for Operation Wrath of God. Operation Wrath of God was a mission given to the Mossad to kill the remaining gunmen and masterminds behind the Munich massacre. Originally, they had only planned to kill those directly connected to the Munich attack, but along the way, they assassinated many other Palestinian Liberation Organization members and some innocent civilians. When asked why a mission of revenge to be allowed, Meir responded with, "From the blood-drenched history of the Jewish nation, we learn that violence, which begins with the murder of Jews, ends with the spread of violence and danger to all people in all nations. We have no choice but to strike at terrorist organizations wherever we can reach them. That is our obligation to ourselves and to peace." The Mossad were led to believe that they had killed the remaining 3 gunmen 2 years after their release to Libya. However, it was discovered by Aaron Klein, author of Striking Back, that Adnan al-Gashey had died to heart failure, and Mohammed Safidi and Jamal al-Gashey were alive and well. Jamal al-Gashey went into hiding in North Africa and was last seen when giving an interview with Kevin McDonald for his film One Day in September in 1999, where he said, "I'm proud of what I did at Munich because it helped the Palestinian cause enormously. Before Munich, the world had no idea about our struggle, but on that day, the name of Palestine was repeated all around the world." The Palestinian hatred for Israel grew, and many others joined the movement, including Dalal Maghrabi, who attacked an Israeli bus in 1978, where 37 civilians and children were killed. The Palestinian Authority have praised her actions by naming numerous schools, sports tournaments, even dedicating hour-long memorial shows for her support in the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. Following the Olympic Games, West Germany realized they needed a counterterrorism unit to prevent further attacks. On April 13, 1973, the GSG-9 Elite Police Tactical Unit was formed. In 1974, the country of France formed the GIGN Elite Police Tactical Unit in light of the event in Munich as well. Since the Resolution 242, peace talks between the feuding countries have been accepted. In 1978, Egypt and Israel signed a peace treaty, along with Israel and Jordan in 1994. The Palestinian and Israeli peace process has been in development since 1993, this including the Oslo Accords of 1995 and Resolution 338, which ended the Yom Kippur War. This conflict has carried on to the modern world with more and more attacks happening every day. From bombs on buses to mass shootings in plazas, the conflict does not seem to end. Palestine is still without a country and continues to fight for the rights to Jerusalem. In the Munich village, monuments have been made to dedicate the remembrance of when not just 11 Olympiads lost their lives, but when the Games lost its serenity. The Munich Massacre stole the innocence from the Olympic Games and has given our world a new light to see this conflict in the modern era. With the failures to compromise in the past, we can only hope that a compromise is made between Israel and Palestine to ensure this event does not happen again.